Hey, everybody. Today for you, podcast number 42. Today's podcast is titled, Where is Your Focus? Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Lombardi, and back by popular demand, and I'm not kidding you, lots of people requesting my wife, Sandy, to be on the show with me, and she is here tonight, ready, willing, and able. So super excited to have her back again. Maybe a regular. We're going to find out, but stay tuned because today's podcast is certainly going to be great. So let's get it kicked off here. We are here to flesh out all the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you deserve. Just really trying to help you have a better quality of life. And it's free to listen in. So welcome aboard. And we want to take a moment to thank you as a listener for taking time out of your day, whatever you're doing right now. We appreciate you taking your time to listening to what we've put together to try to help you out. And we love the feedback. I so look forward to people coming in to personally talk to me about the podcast or mentioning what spoke to them or what they really liked. But I know that I have to listen to the feedback, and some of the feedback was, you should have your wife on there with you because she balances you out. She adds a different perspective and, of course, a woman's point of view, which is something that I just can't do. So if you like this podcast, be sure to share it with other people. Hit the subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on any other episodes and you'll be notified. And let's get ready to rock and roll. If you want to leave us a review, then that's great too. All right, so on with the show. Today's episode is titled, Where is Your Focus? So a couple of backstories. Today I was in my office, and today I was doing some work called SoftWave. It's a new technology, and I'm not trying to promote that or anything on the podcast, but one of our practice members was back to have a treatment with this technology on her knee. She's 90 years young, and I've known her for many, many, many years. And her daughter was with her, and she said, her knees look so much better now since she's done this. She goes, I really wish we took a picture of her really bad knee beforehand so we could compare it to how great it looks now. And I know that they had originally been using these neoprene wraps on her knee to give it some stabilization and support. And she said that there's, they just won't stay on her knee. They keep sliding down because her knees just aren't swollen anymore. And she's like, nobody would ever believe how bad they looked because we never took a picture. And I remember her first appointment to have this looked at. I said, maybe we'll take a video before and after, or maybe take some photos. And I never did it. And part of the reason why was because I was thinking in my head, what if this doesn't show any major change? Then what was the point of doing it? Here she is, a 90-year-old woman. I had my doubts and reservations myself. Meanwhile, she and her daughter were more hopeful, I think, and confident than I was at that point. So I felt kind of like, all right, I'm thinking, what if it doesn't work? And her daughter said, yeah, but what if it does work?
It does work, right?
So my wife had a very similar situation today, if you want to share that.
Sure. We have dynamic thermal imaging come to the office once a quarter, and they do thermography. And I went in for my appointment and was talking with the tech who we've gotten to know. She comes, every year we're there with her. And a friend of mine and had been a practice member of this woman passed away since we'd seen each other. And I was telling her about it. And she just started to cry and said, oh, this job is sucking the life out of me. And we had to move on with thermography, but it just settled in my spirit the entire time, like that she felt that way, and that obviously she's trying to help people, but not everyone gets well. And so when we were all done, I asked if we could talk about that and actually pray together, and it just to flip her perspective of how much I valued her wisdom and her experience and her desire to help women have alternative forms of prevention. And she's just been a tremendous person for me. And, there's times where you're concerned about things and she would say, well, what if it's just XYZ and it's not this terrible thing you're thinking? Like, you immediately think, oh, I must have breast cancer. And she's like, well, what if it's just some irritation? And so she helped flip my perspective over the years. And so I just hoped I could help flip hers, that that this job isn't sucking the life out of her, that she's giving life to other people. So perspective.
It's so easy to get drawn into that. I guess we oftentimes just think the worst case scenarios in so many situations. And our son Luke was kind of overhearing this conversation that we were having today at lunchtime, and he's like, "Oh, that's like the Chinese farmer." Really? And I'm like, "What's that?" And so he told us the story. So that's point number 2. And this farmer had a horse. And this horse was very helpful on the farm. And then one day it ran away. And
everyone's like, oh no.
Yeah, everybody's, oh no. And that's terrible. And the Chinese farmer said, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. And so the next day, the horse came back and it had 10 more horses with it. And so everybody in the town said,
wow, good for you.
Yeah, amazing. You've got 11 horses now and your horse is returned. That's fantastic. And he said, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And so as time went on, his son was riding one of the horses and the horse bucked him off and his son broke his back and he couldn't walk. And everybody around gave him pity and said, oh my gosh, that is so terrible. That horse bucked your son off and now he can't walk. And the Chinese farmer said,
we'll see.
We'll see. And so then the next day, the military showed up in the town and they were drafting everyone to go off to war. And they came to his house and saw his son who was not able to walk, and they didn't take him. So we'll see.
Right.
The point of the story is pretty obvious when you get to that point, and that is that we never know what is really in store, right? We never know what God's plan is for any of us at any time. Circumstances can look great. Circumstances can look bleak, but you don't know what the next moment, the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year will bring.
Right.
It may bring a glorious opportunity. It may bring greater challenges yet to come. You have no idea. So every day is a wait and see, but it's to be lived, I think, with patience and confidence and faith. And that is a limitless life. If you can live a life with that level of patience and confidence and peace, then your life is going to be pretty smooth, in my opinion. So that brings us to point number 3, and you brought this up because you've been reading about this quite a bit lately.
Right. We were talking about how things appear to be bad and the circumstance and how we assess that from the outside. And I've been reading Job this past week, and in the book of Job, Job loses everything. His family is killed. His livelihood, his flock, his sheep are taken. All die. His reputation is taken. And he has these 3 friends that come along and offer wisdom, they think is wisdom. And based on how they're interpreting Job's situation, they think Job must have just done something terrible against God to have God strike him like this. And they're misreading the situation and what's happening. And, it just, again, ties into that for many things, like be careful who we're taking our advice from, right? Like, are they involved, are they deeply involved in knowing what truly is going on? And they were assessing from the outside wrongly. So those were 2 points that I was thinking of in that situation.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're, and again, these friends can be very well meaning. We have lots of relationships in our life that think that they're doing us a favor by pointing things out to us that are not building you up, and really, really good friends are more concerned about are very concerned about your well-being, but they're always looking to build you up, right? And instead of tear you down and say, hey, look what you probably did this wrong,
Right.
Like nobody likes an I told you so, right? And that's kind of what it reminds me of, is like, I told you do that. I could still think of, my father would do that once in a while, and I'd be like, oh, come on, Dad, and like, I know what you're getting at. I know, but yeah, that's for sure. That's really good wisdom right there. Point number 4 is another really good story that you were sharing with me about our son Timothy and this comic. If you would kind of give the backdrop on that, this is good.
Tim and I were sitting together the other night, and he's just got back from the missions trip. I know Pete talked about that last week, and trying to figure out where he's headed in life. He's deeply impacted by what he saw and experienced there, and trying to figure out where God would have him be and what he wants him doing. And he also just published a comic with his friend Judah, his roommate at school. And they've been working on this comic for about 1.5 years. Tim's doing the illustration, and Judah wrote a lot of the narrative. And Tim was just saying, I've poured years and years really into this. He developed the character when we had gone to some listening therapy to help with some of the Tim's brain function back when he was probably 8, 9, 10 years old. And he developed this character, and he really poured a lot of himself into that character. And this character is in the comic that they just published. And the comic's not selling like they anticipated. They printed off, I forget how many copies. Sure. And there's just not the market yet, and they don't have a following. But to Tim, it's devastating. And to him, it was that they didn't like it, or it wasn't received well. And it just came to me. I said, Tim, maybe that whole process wasn't for an audience. Maybe that was for you. And it was part of your story. Like, you worked your life and your emotions into this character, and the process of animating it and drawing it, and hours after hours of creating these scenes. I think that was part of your growth process. So, it's not always the end result that is going to be this glorifying high five, nailed it, home run. It's going to be the steps along the way that are making you who you are, So, not to say that this comic won't take off and be phenomenal in sales, but it's already phenomenal in the journey it's taken Tim through.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I know that they were super hopeful, and what's wrong with being hopeful, right? Yes, it didn't take off right now. Maybe it still will, but I think you really described it well, because it's about the journey, not the destination in this scenario.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be great if they just couldn't produce them fast enough, but the reality is, again, they're not business people.
Well, and so many skills develop through it, right?
Sure.
How to have something published and how to work with another individual.
The amount of effort that they put into creating it and actually getting it to be produced and published, like, right. Come on, I've never done that. That's way above what I would ever even thought I would even attempt to do.
Right.
And they took it so much further. Do they have a lot of skills in marketing and sales and distribution? Absolutely not. But
not yet.
You'll never learn that until you try it.
Right.
And then they got to start getting associated with people that know that business, and I'm sure they can do even better yet. So great one there. And our last one tonight is a topic that came about from a conversation we were having with a friend of ours last night. And she was explaining to us the situation where her ex-husband got in some major trouble, and she was trying to shield that from her daughter. She didn't really know what to do about what to tell her daughter with her ex-husband, who she was divorced from, and that whole broken marriage situation. And here's the child, like, what happens here? And her tendency was to what?
To shield her, not let her know the truth of what was going on. And you brought up that the truth is often the best thing for them to be told. And we just shared how, we over the years would try to create happiness and this perfect lifestyle for our kids. And we realize now that that's not the greatest thing to do, that you need to let them see truth, and that things don't come along easily, that you work hard for things, you persevere through trial, and that's what really makes you who you are.
And there are disappointing things in life.
Right.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. And believe it or not, the whole goal in life isn't like 100% happiness all the time, because it's just not attainable. And I related it to my childhood, because I think I had a pretty cool childhood in the fact that nobody really cared about my happiness. My parents weren't the exact opposite of helicopter parents. They pretty much turned me loose like Huck Finn, and I could be gone all day. They had no idea where I was, and I might show up in time for dinner. And if I did, I got food. If I didn't, there was nothing available for me to eat.
There wasn't a plate waiting.
There was nobody cared. Dinner was over. It was all put away. End of story. You're fending for yourself, because dinner was on the table at 5:00, and nobody cared about my happiness. And, I was off to make mistakes on my own. If I got hurt, I had to figure it out. I mean, everything I did, I had to figure it out myself. Today, exact opposite, right? Back in the early 1980s, I'd ride my bike to a store, put my kickstand down, leave it outside, go inside the store, do whatever I had to do, get out of the store. My bike could still be there. And it was you just got on your bike and rode to the next place. Today, nobody even think of letting an 8-year-old kid ride their bike anywhere to go do things like that without a bike lock and a helmet. We never wore helmets, right? Everything is hyper protected. Parents are helicopter parents all over the place. And what is it creating for kids today? Kids that have a false sense of reality, with an expectation that they're always supposed to be happy, and that it's their right to be happy. And I think that's created a huge problem. There's this huge gap where people just are struggling to find good workers today. Employers, I know as an employer, it's a challenge to find good workers today. And I hear that across the board from many people. So anything you want to add to that? No. Okay. All right. But so anyway, thank you for listening into this week's edition of your Limitless Life Network podcast. Be sure to stay tuned each and every week so that you can stay connected, be inspired, and keep working your way and stripping away all those limitations so you can live a life without limitations. So be sure to tune in each and every week. We'll see you next week on the Limitless Life Network podcast. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. So long.